This training module will help you with knowing what to do regarding voicemail boxes that you encounter during sales prospecting. The reality is that just simply getting the prospects on the phone is your biggest challenge when you're doing phone prospecting. And that is because prospects simply don't answer their phone these days. This is for a couple key reasons. One is, of course, just about everybody has caller ID, so they can see who's calling and screen those calls. But more importantly, when you're doing phone prospecting, you should typically be calling at a decision maker level or at a management level. And the reality is that decision makers and managers are typically often in meetings most of the day. It's not uncommon for someone at a level of authority to have their calendar fully blocked off and in regards to meetings. And if they're in meetings, then either A, they're not in their office where you're calling when you're trying to reach them, or B, they're in their office in a meeting and they can't answer their phone. Now, so if you can picture that, then picture they're away from their desk most of the day, but they are at their desk for an hour in between meetings, and maybe you've timed it to where you're lucky enough to where this is the time that you reach them. Picture what they're like in this particular moment. One characteristic is that they're probably very busy. They're probably very busy catching up from what took place while they were away in terms of checking email, fighting fires. They might be preparing for their next meeting. So even if they're at their desk, odds are, regardless of who the phone call is from, they're not going to answer it because, again, they're extremely busy. Now, you also need to keep in mind that you have competition, just like you might be calling. So are other salespeople. So there's that prospect's phone might be ringing a lot. This influences their resistance to answering your call. If every time they answer the phone call it's someone trying to sell to them, and someone that's maybe not as sophisticated and suave as you, when your call comes in, there's resistance to answering your call. So they get a lot of calls all day long. So this increases their resistance, or their reluctance, should I say, to answering the phone. Because they don't answer the phone much, you can spend up to 50% of your prospecting time reaching voicemail boxes. Meaning, if you spent 2 hours one day doing phone prospecting, you literally could spend a full hour getting nothing but voicemail boxes. And so that's just what it is. But it's not 100%. So there is a place for prospecting when using the phone when prospecting. Now, I want to throw at you a key assumption that could help you with your voicemail methodology in terms of what to do and what not to do. And that is, let's assume that prospects will not call you back. Meaning, when we leave a prospect a voicemail message, the most likely outcome is that they're not going to call us back, or you could say there's an extremely low probability that prospect is going to call us back. You might say that this is a negative way to look at it, but here are 6 reasons why this might be a safe assumption to make. One is, we just talked about it. The prospects are just extremely busy, right? If a prospect has been away from their desk all day, they're extremely busy, maybe they've been traveling and whatnot, do you think that they're going to hear your message and jump at the chance to call you back? Now keep in mind, here's actually a disclaimer. This assumption applies to true cold calling. They don't know who you are. They don't know the company you're calling from. Either one of those or both, right? It's a cold call. If you're doing warm calling, you do not have to factor in this assumption, because the probability definitely increases when you're doing warm calling, meaning they know who you are, you've spoken before, you've met before. They could call you back. It still might be on the low side, but you don't need to just kind of operate with the assumption that they're not going to call you back. So there's a few other reasons why we believe that this is a safe assumption. Number 2 is that the prospect is not interested. They're not interested in your product or whatever you're calling about, and it's not because you have a bad product or because you've done a bad job at creating interest. The reality is that, again, this is cold calling, so they don't have very much information, and voicemail is not enough of a enough space to really build true interest. So why would they call you back and spend their valuable time and take all that energy if they aren't interested? And that they're most likely not, or not extremely interested. Anyway, so the third one is that if you're dealing with decision makers, they might have a certain level of ego, meaning they're a manager, they get called by salespeople all the time. They're the one that is being typically chased, right? And they know that, and they know why that is the case. They might even enjoy that, right? So they might not call you just because maybe you even did trigger a hint of interest, but they might say, you know what? I'll talk to that person, that salesperson, when they call me back. You know what I mean? They're not going to go and, again, chase you. It's your job to chase them, and that's fine. Number 4 is that the prospect assumes that you'll call them back, right? They know, they've dealt with a lot of salespeople. They know you're a salesperson, and they know that it's your job to call them back, and that most likely you'll call them back. So again, picture an extremely busy individual. They say, oh, well, I know they're going to call me back. In fact, you might even say you're going to call them back in your voicemail, so they wait for you to call them back. Number 5 is the prospect. So let's think, okay, let's have an optimistic outlook, right? You built interest on your voicemail, and the prospect jots down your phone number on their pad of paper and says, you know what, I need to return this call. There's a very good chance that they forget to call you back, right? They say, oh, I'll call this person tomorrow, and again, they're busy and they never get around to it. That's very realistic. It's very realistic that they don't call you back even if they intend to. And you know what? The reality is the last one is probably one of the most reasonable factors in this, which is that the prospect doesn't even listen to your message. They might be away from their desk all day, and there might be 20 unheard voicemail messages, and they have no choice but to delete them all. Or maybe they hear your intro and they determine that you're not an internal employee or someone that they know, and they delete it without really hearing all of your message. So if you think that any of those are pretty likely, let's face it, the prospect might not call you back. And again, you might think this is negative, but let's see why this is a good assumption to really embrace. One is, if the prospect isn't going to call you back, this could determine when you leave a voicemail and message and when you hang up. One of the most common questions that salespeople ask is, how do you really know when to leave a voicemail, or how often should I leave voicemail messages? Well, if you really think about it, and if you say, well, the prospect's not likely to call me back, so that can influence your frequency of how often you leave voicemail messages. In terms of the ratio versus how often you call them, or how, out of all your call attempts, how often of those are you leaving voicemail messages, just to be completely clear. If you don't think that the prospect's going to call you back, this could impact what you say in your message. And the reason why is because you can kind of change the goal of your message. We'll talk about that here in a minute. If you don't expect the prospect to call you back, this could influence what you do after you leave your voicemail message. And most importantly, this is really one of the most important things, is that this can impact your expectation of what takes place after you leave a voicemail message. Okay, so remember I said if we do phone prospecting for 2 hours one day, we could spend 1 hour reaching voicemail messages. And let's say that we spend that hour we reach voicemail boxes, and let's say we spend an hour leaving voicemail messages, which actually would probably become more than an hour because it's taking up time to leave those voicemail messages. So let's just say we spend an hour and a half of our day actually leaving prospect voicemail messages, and let's say we get 0 callbacks that day or the next day or that week. How does that make you feel when you're expecting callbacks and your goal is to trigger action in the form of the prospect calling you back? What does that do to your mind? What does that do to your motivation? what does that do to your confidence? It decreases it. And it makes you feel bad, it makes you feel unproductive, and that you're not accomplishing anything. And the reality is that it should not do none of those things should occur. Because the reality is that it's just normal. You're not getting called back because of all those factors that we talked about. And it's okay. And it's not that you're not being productive. You are being productive. So this can really influence your expectations. And that's not just for a mental, a mind set or a confidence standpoint, but that can also impact your actions from your expectations, meaning a prospect might not return your call, and you might say to yourself, well, they must not be interested. And you determine your future actions based on that assumption, when the reality is that's not a good assumption. The assumption that they're not interested is not good, because you're not really basing it on the right, it's not based on accurate information, meaning you would not make that assumption if you really knew that it was normal for the prospect not to call you back, meaning it's okay for you to continue to pursue this prospect if they don't call you back, because you have that assumption that nobody calls anybody back. And I know that some of you might be thinking, oh, well, I've gotten callbacks before. It can happen, sure, but this is an assumption to make in terms of the most likely outcome, or the majority. And so as you can see there, those are some pretty good outcomes from this assumption. And that assumption can drive some of these core value concepts that we can use when figuring out what messages to say. So first, use brevity, right? 20 to 30 seconds, that's all you got. Don't leave, try not to leave anything longer than that. So if the prospect's not going to call us back, we can shift to not really focusing on the goal of the goal is to get the prospects to call us back. So when I get messages from salespeople all the time, and it goes something like this: this is so and so, I'm with such and such company, and the core what I want to get to is right here. I would really appreciate it if you call me back at your earliest convenience. My number is blah blah blah, right? So their goal is for me to call them back. So if I'm not going to call them back, let's just not even spend our 20 to 30 seconds really focusing on that, and let's focus on something else, like educating the prospect. Let's turn our voicemail message into a commercial that educates the prospect on why they should talk to us when we call them back. And the last two tips here are, you do want to leave your contact info just in case they do want to get a hold of you. So leave your contact info slowly in case somebody's writing it down as you're saying it. You don't want the prospect to have to rewind a voicemail to get, the worst case is that they want to call you and they can't easily get your contact information out of the voicemail. So say it slowly, don't make them rewind, say it twice. And then the other thing is that after every voicemail message you leave, you want to send a voicemail follow-up email. This is a very important best practice. This is for a few reasons. One is this is a reinforcement, so you're kind of multi-touching them. You're trying to reach them over the phone, you're leaving them a voicemail, now you're following up with an email. The other thing is that it's a lot easier for them to extract your contact information from an email than for them to write it down on a pad of paper. It's easier for them to save and store your contact info and store your email than to save a voicemail message. So, not rocket science there. Alright, now let's just jump right in, and this is probably what you'll find most beneficial on this training module. Here are some voicemail examples of what to say with those concepts being used. This is a template. You could copy this and replace the red text with your info. But this is a message that focuses on the value that you offer. And so I'll just I'll kind of read through this, and I'll use maybe my own inflection and my own words here and there, but I'll follow this flow, and it goes something like this. Hello, Mary. This is Michael Halper. I'm calling from Sales Scripter. Purpose for my call to you is that we help sales managers to decrease the amount of time it takes to get new sales hires up and running. I actually don't know if you are fit for what we do, so that's why I was calling you with a question or two. I'm going to try you again next week. If you'd like to reach me in the meantime, my number is 555-5555. Again, this is Michael Halper calling from SalesScripter, 555-5555. Thank you, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Take care. Beep, and then you hang up, whatever. So, short, sweet. This message focuses on the value. I really didn't talk about my company, didn't talk about the product. I didn't really say that I would be very appreciative if she'd call me back. I just got to the point and whatnot. So I could then follow up with an email that says that sort of that same thread of thought and send that to her. Here's a voicemail message that is similar, but it focuses on pain. I won't read through the whole thing because the end of this message is exactly the same. But let me just go through this, and I'll go through it with my SalesScripter examples again. Hello, Mary. This is Michael Halper calling from SalesScripter. Purpose for my call is that we find that it's common for sales managers to have challenges with training new salespeople and getting them ramped up quickly, being able to minimize and decrease sales staff turnover, and getting the most out of underperforming salespeople. I don't know if you are concerned about any of those, and that's why I was calling you with a question or two. I'm going to try you again next week. If you'd like to reach me in the meantime, and blah blah blah. The ending there is exactly the same on that. So you can see there I'm staying under 20 or 30 seconds, and with this I'm focusing on, this is a pain-focused voicemail message. Here's another variation. This one focuses on a customer example. So let's just jump right in. But hello, Mary. This is Michael Halper calling from SalesScripter. Purpose of my call, Mary, is that we worked with XYZ Incorporated, and we actually helped them to decrease the amount of time it takes them to get new salespeople ramped up. Decrease that from 6 months to 1 month. And what that led to is that actually led to a decrease in sales staff turnover, and we improved the percentage of sales reps hitting their number by 40%. So, but you know what? I don't know if we can make those same improvements for you or help you in that same way, and so that's why I was just calling you with a question or two. I'll try you again next week. Blah blah blah, and then the ending again is the same. So you see, those are very powerful voicemail examples, and you can easily use those for your own product. And again, all of those you could follow up with a paired voicemail follow-up email. So the real question is, when do I leave a message like one of those, or when do I just hang up? And there's two factors to consider here. One is that leaving messages is time consuming. Now, if you call, let's say you do 100 dials in a day. I mean, everybody has different, amounts of phone prospecting that they do, but let's just use 100 dials. You probably do not make that many dials, but if you made 100 dials, and let's say that 50% of the time you reach voicemail boxes, so you get 50 voicemail boxes, and if you were to leave a 20 to 30 second message, you can see that there's a lot of time. That time adds up. It's time consuming. It's much quicker to hang up and move on to the next person. If you're making two cold calls, you could probably leave a voicemail message on each without worrying about the time. But as you can see, when you really ramp up your volume, that really adds up, and that's something you need to factor in. Although the more important thing is the second point, which is it limits your callback timing. Meaning, if I call you today, this in the morning, and I leave you a voicemail message, then I can't call you in the afternoon. If this is a cold call, right? Again, if this is a warm call, I'm waiting on some paperwork from you, and you're not sending it to me. Listen, I can leave you 5 voicemails in a day, right? Because I need your paperwork, right? But if we're doing cold calling, it becomes awkward. It becomes stalkerish. it becomes more questionable. My credibility is decreased. Rapport is decreased. If I leave you a voicemail message this morning and then I call you again in the afternoon. So what you kind of need to do there is what you need to pause. There's sort of this, even if you don't necessarily say please call me back, there's sort of this natural it's naturally implied that either A, some time needs to take place for them to call you back, or B, you need to wait in order for it to be appropriate to call them back. And so there needs to be a pause. And how long do you pause? It depends. I mean, depends who you're calling and whatnot. It depends on your selling style or your level of aggressiveness. But you should pause. You should pause a day, 2 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, whatever. Most likely it's going to be either 2 to 3 days or 1 week. That's probably the appropriate pause. But so the key thing here, more important than the pause, is that if we hang up, I can actually keep calling you back. I could call you if I called you this morning and I hung up on your voicemail, I can call you this afternoon or even late morning, and it's okay. I don't look crazy because I'm operating under the assumption that you don't know I called. I think you were away from your office. I didn't leave a voicemail, even knowing you maybe saw my number, and I'm calling you back. I'm trying to get a hold of you. It's not. It changes everything when you don't leave a voicemail message, and that's something to really keep in mind, because that's kind of a powerful thing, is to have that ability to keep calling back. And so here's one way to draw it up: is it's good to have some sort of call cadence, and call cadence refers to sort of the rhythm that you use in terms of how often you call and how often you leave voicemail. And so what we do is we sort of have like round 1, round 2, round 3. And round 1 looks like, hey, you know what, I'm going to send you an email. It could include a pre-call email. If I have your email address, I might send you an email before I even call you. And then I'm going to follow that email up with a phone call. If I don't get you, I'm going to leave you a voicemail message on the very first call attempt. But then I need to pause. So, again, what is it? Pause 1 week, couple days, whatever it is. And oh, by the way, after I leave my voicemail message, I'm going to send you a voicemail follow-up. And so then I pause. Once I'm done pausing, I begin round 2. Now, round 2 doesn't begin with a voicemail message. It actually begins with call attempts with no message. So this is where I might call you very frequently, 5 to 10 times, without leaving a voicemail message. So, and then at some point, I need to leave you a voicemail message, another voicemail message, if you're still not answering your phone. This could be either after 5 or 10 attempts. It could be after a couple weeks. Again, it's on kind of a case-by-case basis. You'll see here I put voicemail message number 2. What's kind of cool is I could leave you maybe a value message at first, and then maybe a pain message next. The kind of cool thing about that is I'm beginning to expose you to different information. Sort of like I'm giving you the different commercials. So, it's a bit of a stretch, but I'm at least hitting you with different information. So if you're paying attention, I'm building your knowledge more than I would if I was just saying the same message. Definitely I'm building your knowledge more than if I just said I'm with such and such company. I'd appreciate a call back. So then you pause again after message 2. Now, one thing that we do here, and this really doesn't necessarily apply to voicemail messages, more so it just applies to kind of getting into an account or company. After round 2, we actually move laterally and horizontally through the organization. So we will look to call people above and below and in other departments. If we find new contacts, and we start them on round 1, and then we continue on to round 3 on that existing contact. And round 3 is similar to round 2, 5 to 10 attempts. Leave a different voicemail message and follow up with the email. After round 3, we've done a lot. So a lot of people often say, when do I stop? And I believe the next slide, yeah. So I'll go back up to this, and there is a slide that talks about this. But when do I stop leaving a voicemail message? After round 3, you've left 3 voicemail messages. You've called them, 10 to 20 times. You've sent them 3 emails. So you could begin to throttle it back at this point. And so whatever sort of pipeline or lead classification you're using, you could begin to downgrade the prospect after round 3. Maybe you don't delete them from your database, but you change them from a prospect to, just a cold contact, or downgrade them from a suspect, or, it depends on your lead classification. So in that call cadence, you'll notice we have like 10 to 20 call attempts where we're hanging up. Here are some things to do when you do hang up and you do not leave a message, because we talked about what to do regarding the message. So when you don't leave a message, you could do a couple things. One is you could press 0 on the voicemail message. It depends on the phone system, but you can sometimes press 0 when they're talking in the prospect in their greeting, and that'll route you back to the gatekeeper. And then you can use this as an opportunity to try to connect with someone else. You can do that organizational movement. Try to call someone above or below, and you can do that by saying something like, hi, I'm trying to reach Mary Phillips, but can't seem to get a hold of her. Do you know who in her organization I should connect with? And you ask that to a gatekeeper. You can continue on to say, is there someone else that holds the same role as her? Because maybe there's someone in the same title as her. Is there someone that reports to her that I could speak with? Or is there? And you might almost say that I could speak with. Is there someone that reports to her? That will be more direct without saying that I can speak with, and that'll help you that will increase the odds of that person giving you a name. And then you could say, oh yeah, who does she report to, by the way? But that's an opportunity to, if you can't get a hold of the person, you could try to contact the executive assistant and treat them as a prospect, gather additional information, gather additional contacts. So we talked about when you stop leaving a voicemail message. Again, that could be after round 3 of the call cadence that I went through. It could be after you've left a large number of voicemail messages, and again, then you sort of begin to downgrade that prospect in your pipeline, or the way that you classify your leads. And that's pretty much it. That is our methodology for what to do and how to maximize voicemail messages. Again, this is getting prospects on the phone is really one of your biggest challenges. You could spend up to 50% of your time dealing with voicemail boxes. So having some sort of methodology for what to do, when to leave a voicemail, when not to, can immediately improve your results. Turn voicemail from a challenge to a communication tool. It's one additional way that you have to communicate with the prospect. Use it as a commercial delivery vehicle. Focus more on educating the prospect on why they should talk to you instead of trying to get them to call you back. Focus your messages more on value, pain, giving client examples, and follow up every voicemail with an email. So that's it. Give some of that a shot. Let us know if we can help in any way. Good luck and happy hunting.